I'm really excited to be with everybody all week. Harrison, I know a lot of people are going to be thanking you, but let's just keep that going. Your vision for doing this is so contagious, and I'm just excited to be a part of the mission. I want to introduce, just triple checking that Carlos is on. Alyssa, okay, we got a lot of folks here, so I'm privileged to get to introduce tonight's keynote speaker who's kicking it off. We have with us Carlos Bocanegra. Carlos, for those of you that do not know, let me give you some of his career highlights. He played 100, that's 100 games for our senior men's national team. During that time that he was with the national team, Carlos was captain of the United States men's national team for 6 years, which says a lot about his leadership ability. Carlos had 14 years of professional soccer, first year being in 2000, where he was the MLS Rookie of the Year. He was also Defender of the Year in the MLS in 2002 and 2003. And if anybody's questioning, for example, can he still bring it? The answer is yes. I have jumped in occasionally in a small-sided staff game on Fridays, and the dude is a competitor. He has not found the off switch, and he still brings it. Carlos also played in Europe for teams such as Fulham and also Rangers in Scotland, and finished his career in 2014, which during that time he came over as the technical director for the new MLS franchise, which is Atlanta United. Carlos was and is pretty much one of the architects that brought Atlanta United their first MLS championship in 2018. And he has a broad range of responsibilities across the club, including hiring of the first team head coach, architecting the club philosophy, and reaching all the way down to the academy level, where we have over 100 young men that are aspiring future professional soccer players. Fun fact, he's also amazing at the game of pool. He kicked my rear end this weekend when we were in St. Louis together. And he knows a surprisingly amount of details about chickens. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to my buddy and really one of the legends and heroes of soccer in this country. One last thing about it, when I asked him about helping us out tonight, it was an immediate yes. He didn't even have to think about it. Carlos, thanks for being here, and over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction as well. Yeah, honor for me to be here and be able to speak. So we did have a good game of pool over the weekend, Ben, and the chicken reference he is speaking to is we have just ordered a chicken coop and 4 chickens for our house. We are, trying to be homesteaders and advance in that sector of our life. But look, when Ben asked me to come join and be a speaker, it was really cool. Being a part of the national team for so long, being able to represent your country, the similarities, while it's similar but different, as you guys are putting your lives on the line and protecting our country, giving us the freedom to do what we do and enjoy life. It was a really cool experience to go out and represent the country. And every time we put on that jersey, the red, white, and blue, winning a game can give a little bit of pleasure, especially in a World Cup game, to the entire country. A small victory brings a lot of pleasure to 300 million people, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is great for me. What I wanted to start out with was just talking a little bit about what stood out to me from coaches as my time as a player, some of the experiences I had, positive and negative, and then also just how that affected me. And then I'll get into a few of the things with the national team that I just touched on. But what I want to do is make sure I can leave time at the end of the call, at the end of the conversation, to have some questions. So I'm going to speak a little bit, but it would be great to hear any questions and feedback, or really just anything at the end of our time. So with that said, for me, like I said, what stood out to me on my journey? So I grew up in Southern California. I started with ASO. My mom was my first coach. My older brother played, so they kind of chucked me in the sport. I liked it. And obviously mother as a coach, that's a unique experience. As I got a little bit older, my father was my coach. He immigrated from Mexico. Although that's a popular sport in that country, he did not play. He was more of a basketball, baseball guy. So he was just kind of out there trying to instill the discipline and making sure we're learning some fundamentals. Then you go into high school, and this is where I started realizing kind of what impact coaches could have. And a guy named Mike Collins was my high school coach. And we had a pretty good high school team. We ended up winning CIF 2 times in Southern California, which is like the state title. But we were kind of a bunch of jokers. And we had 8 guys that started on the soccer team, also started on our American football team. They're opposite seasons in California. And we would goof around at practice. And when we're doing conditioning in preseason, we had to run around these fields, and we had some bushes, and it's a couple laps, and I would hide behind one of the bushes for some laps. And like, he kind of let us get away with a little bit of it. And then he brought us in afterwards one day and was like, look guys, like, stop messing around. Like, you're some good players, but if you really want to get anywhere, like, I can only take you so far. So you guys are going to have to start making sure, if you want to be the fittest in the team, you got to do the work. If you want to show up on time, you got to do the work. And so he did it in a really good way, where he had joking mannerisms about him, but it was a good lesson that just kind of like, I can only take you so far, that you've got to start, doing some stuff for yourself. So I thought that was pretty cool. When I turned kind of 17, 18, my club coach in Southern California, a guy named Bill Schwartz, he was a college coach, and he kind of took that to the next level. We were a good team, but he made us a group, and he was great about including everyone, coaching everyone. And we had some standout national team players on the team, but that didn't matter if you were a national team player or the 18th man on the roster coming off the bench. He coached everybody, and it really brought us to a group. He challenged us with respect. Again, lighthearted to a certain extent, but when it was time on the field to do our business, we all knew it was time to do our business, and we stopped kind of messing around. And so that was excellent to hear from him and learn on that side. Then went into college, and I had Ziggy Schmidt as my coach, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but legendary coach at UCLA, coached the Galaxy, coached various national teams for our country. And he was another one that he was very prepared, very detail oriented, but really cared about the person. And I remember a few times in college, he came to me, and he was like, you didn't do, this is before a game started at Sac State, I won't forget this, but he comes to me and he says, I watched you in the warm-up. You didn't do one sprint the entire warm-up. Why is that? And I'm going, well, first of all, why are you watching me so closely? That's my initial thought. But like I don't know, it's hot outside, like getting ready for the game. He's like, do you actually like want to do well in your career and have something? You've got to prepare the same every time. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a Sunday, Sac State, or against Virginia in the final. Like, prepare the same every day. And so he follows that up a couple of weeks later with how you doing? How's the family doing? And really getting in where it's authentic and it's genuine. And so I think that the thing was that the trend that I had with kind of all those coaches along my kind of youth journey, they cared about the person. They knew how to speak and interact with the players. And I also, it's funny saying this, out loud, but I'm like, what was I like? I seemed like I was a difficult person to coach at that age. Like, I was a high performer, but clearly I needed some instruction and direction to be called out, but called out in a way that didn't discourage me from the game. And so I think that was pretty cool, like along my journey to have that on the youth side. Take then my next steps kind of into the professional game. And I got to be coached by some fantastic people, not only their on-field skill and their their ability to read the game and organize us, but there's people that really cared about the person. And I had, Chris Coleman at Fulham, excellent guy, Welsh, just really, wasn't the best tactician, and he knows that, but he could really get the most out of each individual. And again, he cared and he took time to speak to the people. Christophe Galtier, who was most recently at PSG, and I had him at a few clubs, in France, and just his ability to manage the players. And it was a great, I was about 27, 28, I think, when I went to him. And, I was an established pro by then, but he had a group. We were at Saint Etienne, which was a, mid-table challenge for Europe type club. And he was a top coach, again, prepared, detail-oriented, but on the field, he coached us all the same. And a veteran to a young guy to a national team player, he would get into us when he needed to in a respectful way, mainly just letting us know that is not the standard. And this is the standard. We've gone over this. This is what I expect out of you. And if you can't do this, I'm not going to be able to play you, right? And this is what I want in this training session. We watched it ahead of time. You need to execute like this. If you can't execute like that, I'm going to have to make a change. And so it was, informative. It was direct. And then, but he did it in a way that was honest and respectful. So you knew where you stood. And I always appreciated that. And he wasn't like a joking kind of guy, but he had a good nature about him. And then, I remember a story. I can't remember if I told Ben or not, but then this guy, he comes in one day and, got, a lot of fit athletes in there in the locker room, and the guys, shirts off just out of the gym, feeling good about themselves. And, he comes into the locker room in his underwear and his little pot belly and talking about, messing with the guys and just showing a little bit of a human side. And again, this is at, the professional level. But it just, I think it shows that, like, you can still be respectful and hard and direct and honest with players and while you're coaching them, but then humanizing things and letting us see that, like, all right, like, fair enough, he is a real person. I think that was also, something nice for us to experience. So we had that. Then on the opposite end, on the opposite spectrum, I had a coach during my time overseas that we passed each other in the hall and would not say anything, just blanked you. And you're kind of going, it's a bit weird. Like, we work together every day, just a hello, how you doing, head nod, but no, just a blank. On the field, everything you did, yelling, screaming, like belittling people in the locker room after the game, just like really hard to gain confidence, and then really hard to create a culture, because it was a culture of fear. And I think that's where, looking back on that was one of my worst experiences with a coach in general, that you just felt anything you did wasn't good enough. Doesn't even say hi to you in the locker, like passing each other in the training rooms. The other players are getting yelled at. It just fosters an environment that, like, one, nobody wants to be in, and then you want to fight for your teammates, but you almost feel like you keep coming to a dead end. And so that was something that I think, you take positives and negatives from everything you do in your career, whatever walk of life, whether we have different bosses or teachers or coaches or whatever it is. But, like, that also helped me after the time really realize, like, him as a coach or him as a person in a leadership, like, I don't want to be a part of that type of culture, and so I think you learn from it. And, now being the technical director for Man United, and being the second employee here when we started the club, 9-10 years ago, really leaning on some of these experiences that you have throughout your career of how do you want your culture to be? What type of people do you want in your organization? How am I going to try to set the tone as a leader, as someone in, that has influence or power, whatever you want to call it. So I think that you learn from everything, and that's the power of coaching, I believe. And you guys are going to influence so many kids and so many lives, and you remember little things that coaches say to you in a tough moment, when everyone's stressed, when maybe you make a mistake and you're feeling horrible about yourself. What are people saying to you? Are you being encouraged? Are you finding some things difficult? Do they take that extra time to invest in you? It goes a long ways, and I think those things stick with you. And so, as you all are entering this or going through your coaching and teaching and those experiences, I just you all have probably had coaches or teachers and that affected you in those ways. And so I think just trying to remember that everything you do or all your actions they stick with people for a long time and can potentially influence them. And so just wanted to talk about that. The kind of the other aspect I wanted to talk about with the positive experience I had and the coaches that I thought did a great job in my career. All of them were well prepared. They were all very organized. They could have that human interaction, right? They were process oriented and process driven. So I knew what was coming. They knew what was coming. The entire group knew what was coming. So we had that consistency, right? And the repetition and them being authentic and having their values and staying true to them. And that's what I mean. In some of these moments where things get tough, or whatever age you're coaching, the kids cry or they're having a tough time out there, or the parents are getting involved, and how do you stay true and how do you stay consistent when times are tough? And I can only imagine some situations y'all have been in the military where times are tough, it's very stressful, and how you guys are able to react and kind of keep the calm and do your job and get it done. And I think that's an excellent trait. And if y'all are able to pass that along to these kids you're coaching, I mean, what a skill for life. So that's pretty fantastic. Then just to kind of transition over. Well, let me pause there, and Ben, you tell me if you want me to keep talking, or should I pause for a few questions now and then go on to a little bit of the national team?
One thing I think it'd be great for the group to hear, Los, is we have 100 kids in the academy. What are some of the things that you look for in that group of academy coaches whose responsibility it is to bring up the next generation of pros? I think if you talk a little bit about that, and then questions for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think so we've got our coaches in the academy that we're responsible for about 100 to 110 kids, varying on each year. And that's from age 12 to about 18, 19 years old. And so something we are really trying to encourage but even outside of that, is they're the initial contact. And so their families have to be engaged, right? And they need to feel that affinity to the club. And so how are they balancing coaching them on the field, but also seeing how they're being raised as young men, and what are they turning into? Because we want to have high character individuals, right? And so it's not just coaching them and leaving them and we go home, but it's that constant check-in with them 7 days a week. And it's a full-time job, right? Making sure everything's going all right at home. Bringing the families involved even more to understand, hey, this is what we're doing now. This is potentially what some of your kids are going through. They might struggle a bit because they're not playing as much. How are they doing in school outside of here? Are they having any other struggles? Is there anything else we should know about? So it's really getting to know their whole circle, right? Their circle of trust, so to speak, around them. And it's hard. It's hard for young coaches to do, especially we have some guys that are coaches and girls that are coaches that they don't have kids of their own either. And so them learning these skills and trying to, become father figures, so to speak, or, influential coaching figures in their life, it's a real challenge. And so that's something we've tried to give them some support on and work with them on, but we're being very intentional about that as a club, to really dig into these kids and have the coaches focus on not only their on-field, how are they doing and how are they performing, but what's going on in their life and how can we continue to influence them to become better individuals as people around or in life as well. So that was quite interesting for us. But I'll transition over to the national team stuff. It's not going to be too long. It was just really kind of sharing some stories that being able to represent your country, the national team. It was a great honor for me. It was actually 110 times, Ben, not 100. So I'll have to dock you on that one a little bit later. But that aside, and I'm joking, it was every single time you pull on that jersey and represent your country, again, just the pride that goes through. And it's hard to explain in words what you feel with that. It's hard to explain that, like, you feel like you almost have a nation on your back. And then you transition over into World Cup times and World Cup moments where I remember walking out, captaining the team against England in the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. And, you know, ABC game, midday, prime time, like, you know, the nerves going through you. And just everybody in there was like, we want to show well to make our country proud and have people, you know, smile today, right? And it was just like, I don't know, it's just like I'm getting like goosebumps talking about it. But like, then, you know, the national anthem comes through and we know what you all do to protect us, so we have that opportunity, right? And then how can we, you know, use that as a platform to go, hey, like, we're the freaking best country in the world, let's go show everybody what we got, right? And like, you know, how do you just get that feeling, get pumped up out there? And so it's just, that was amazing to feel. And like, you know, everybody on this call has made sacrifices. You miss weddings, birthdays, births of child, you know, sacrificing your time, vacation. And, you know, for me, I would do it all again to do that, because, you know, the love of this country and what it meant to be able to represent the USA in a soccer jersey, because of, you know, all the sacrifices so many of you all and your family and your friends have done. Like, that to me is amazing. And so I wanted to make sure I could at least touch on that, because that was a cool aspect. And then I'll kind of finish up with a little story. But we were in South Africa at that tournament. We were at the final match day, our third match at the group stage against Algeria, and we needed to win to advance, right? And so, you know, 2006 World Cup, we got knocked out, didn't get out of the group stage, huge failure. I was a part of that as well. Captaining the country, you know, you feel the weight of your world. It's like, we got to get out of the group. We got to make the country proud here. And so we ended up going on. It was like, you know, some super late goal against Algeria. We score almost like a walk-off home run type situation. We win it. And we were in South Africa. There wasn't great internet. And so, you know, a couple days go on, and then we hear about this video that's surfacing. They're like, all these fan fests around the country. I'm tearing up here because I'm thinking about it, but like, these fan fests around the country were like chucking beer, and you see like Kansas City, Chicago, Miami, New York, LA. And like, we didn't have great internet. So like, we saw it very late, and like, it kind of got to us a couple days later. But they were showing it at our team meal, and it was just like the most amazing feeling ever, that like, that one goal, we moved on, and the entire country was like, all right, that day, that was cool. And it's bringing me back. I'm getting a little bit emotional about it. That was I haven't talked about that in a long time, but that was anyways, that was really cool. And just, I think, understanding you guys have a bunch of little victories that maybe aren't always talked about, so to speak, in the military, but hopefully that amplified it a bit, that, you know, we understand you guys got us to a point where we're able to take it on that global stage. So I'll leave it at that. For my portion, I would love to take some questions and get stuck in, but thank you guys for having me.
Amazing, Carlos. Amazing. Thank you. We do have some questions. Harrison, how many can we take? I know we've got some time to get through here. What do you think?
We can do a couple. It all depends on the question, right, and on the answer. So Ben, just select, you know, in order. And guys, you know, we would love to do Q&A with Carlos all night. We want to respect Coach's time, and we want to stay on time. So over to you, Ben.
Let's get in there, though. Let's get in there. We'll try to do as many as we can.
Jorge, we'll go with you, and then right after that, Jose.
Yes.
Awesome. First of all, thank you guys for putting this on. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time now. Thank you for everybody that's here. Mr. Bocanegra, thank you for your time as well. My name is Jorge Lujan. I am stationed out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Active duty coming up on 16 years, been coaching youth soccer coming up on a decade. Part of that decade, I was kind of a father, but my kids, I was a father, but my kids were not at that age where they could be playing. So I was kind of just coaching for coaching. In the last couple of years now, my kids are a big part of my soccer journey as I am theirs. So my question to you, you mentioned early in your points that your mom was your first coach, your dad was a big part of your coaching experience. I think a large part, if not majority of us, kind of know the success that you've had in your career, and kind of all stemming from your mom and your dad kind of being your first coaches. So my question to you is I find myself walking a very delicate line, being coach and dad at the same time. How do you approach that from a coach's perspective as an adult, as a person involved highly in soccer? And how do you, from the other point of view, as a kid, like, do you wish your mom and dad had coached you harder or less, or do you wish they had not coached you at all? Just kind of tidbits, just for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience can kind of relate. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I can relate a lot. That's a great question. I've got two young boys that are in soccer. I've really tried to be a little bit more hands off and not be too pushy. I've been fortunate in my career to have a professional career in the sport, and so I try to be really encouraging with them. It's hard. Sometimes I'm biting my knuckle on the sidelines. I also don't want to be too passive where they just think it's okay to not work hard that day, right? And so really, like, my messaging to my boys is like, guys, I don't care how many goals you score. Like, that's not what I'm interested in. And my young one who's 6, that's all he wants to talk about is how many goals he scores. And I'm like, dude, like, great, but like, I want you to be the hardest worker on the field. That is what dad cares about. That is, like, if you continue to work hard, there's always going to be players that are better than you out there somewhere. Someone's always going to be better. But if no one outworks you, you're going to give yourself the best chance to keep going and going far, right? And so, do they listen and do that all the time? Nope. And it is frustrating for me. I try not to be too pushy with it. I ask myself the same question, like, am I being too laid back with them, and should I push a bit more? So I go through that also, and it's just trying to find a balance. And I think, with your kids when to push, when to pull a little bit, and it's parenting, it's teaching and parenting more than coaching, I think. So I struggle with the same thing, and I want them to be successful, but it's more just trying to, if you start the season, we're finishing the season. You're not quitting, right? We're going to try to be on time to practice every day. I want you to work hard every day. And I want them to enjoy it too. I don't want to burn them out and just like force them there. And so, trying to make sure, when we get home, if they need, they need some downtime, or, they want to sit and watch TV for a little bit instead of going out to, kick the ball around every afternoon with dad, like, that's okay. So I'm trying to have that balance, but just have a couple, baseline standards that we've got to work hard every day. If we start something, we're not stopping it, right? And go out there, be a good teammate and work hard, and try to enjoy yourself. So yeah, I want them to have the love of the game, because I think, I've got a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old boy and a 12-year-old daughter. She's not in the sport, she does other sports. And so I want them to love it. And I think once they love it, they'll have that self-drive, the intrinsic, motivation. And so I hope I can just keep the love and fun for them while not pushing them too hard. So that's kind of how I've approached it.
Carlos, thanks. Jorge, very timely question. A lot of comments in the chat about, hey, great question. I think that's something all the parent coaches wrestle with. Jose, you're up.
Oh, hey, Mr. Bocanegra, is Jose. I used to play for a while. when I was overseas, I got a chance to play in Germany, Italy. So the motivation was always there. Right now, I'm assistant coaching a women's college team. The motivation sometimes there, sometimes it isn't. My question to you as a player, where did you get your motivation, or how did you motivate yourself? And I know you were a team captain. How did you motivate others as I guess as a coach, as a more of a sideline guidance? How did you motivate the players during practice?
Yeah, so I think again from a young age, I enjoyed it. My parents put me in the sport, and like I had fun. I was playing with all my buddies, and I think that helped a lot. As I got older, again, my dad, same thing. Like, hey, you got to work hard, right? Like you got to be the one that works the hardest up there. You got to hustle. Right? He used the word hustle a lot. Like I want to see you hustle every game. And so just kind of as I got older, he would be on me about that. I told you my stories about not doing the running from a high school coach. He got on me in the right way. My club, all these guys kind of, along in my career, coaches influenced me to kind of not let me sort of slip or you start to change. And it didn't really click into me. Like, my first few years as a pro, didn't really take care of myself that great. And then I just kind of was like, do I want to do this, or am I just going to kind of skate along and get by my, God-given athletic ability, so to speak? And, just something kind of in me transitioned and started taking care of myself better, being a bit more committed to everything, nutrition, sleep, schedule, all these things. I seek people out to help, from performance to nutrition to everything, and just wanted to learn and be a sponge. And so, it took a little bit longer maybe for me to mature, so to speak, in my career. And then I started getting that self-drive, and I wanted to do it for myself. And I think if it was coming from somebody else that constantly, hey, you got to, like, it's hard, right? You've got to have that internal drive to want to be better. And then, as a captain, as I started, one of the players that was a little bit better on most of the teams that I played on, I wanted to be someone that they could count on every practice, that I worked, I'm on your team, we're working hard today, we're gonna be competitive. And so just really leading by example, almost more than anything. I wasn't like a big shouter, yeller, talker, team huddle, motivational speech. That wasn't really me. It was more, I'm going to go out there and show by my play and my hard work, and like everybody's going to see how committed I am to this, that I'm going to bring some people along with me. And then, you start getting a few of the other guys that are like that, and teammates that are like that. And, with the national team, like, yeah, I was the captain, but, I had a great group, Tim Howard, Steve Cherundolo, even, Michael Bradley is a younger one, Jaden Merritt, all these guys that were, Dempsey, he's a bit, you guys know him, you see him on TV, he's kind of quirky, likes to rap, whatever. But like, I'll tell you what, when this guy in practice, you want him on your team because he's freaking competing. And like, so like, those are the type of guys. Then if you can get that group together as almost like a leadership group, then it starts to bleed out into the team, and they're not going to accept anything less than your best effort every day. And so that was our biggest thing, I think, with the national team, and being a captain. Like, yeah, like, okay, you get to wear the armband and walk out, but you can't do it by yourself, right? And so you've got to make sure there's other people around you with similar intentions and motivating them. But I think if you can do it by you're one person working and showing you're committed every time, that's how I went about it, and that's what I think made some of our national teams probably play a little bit beyond our level, because we had such a commitment and such a good group, all aiming for the same thing. We were able to achieve maybe a little bit more than our talent level was at that moment.